It is nearly a decade and countless court appearances, and I do mean countless. It's difficult to keep up. The Senzo Meyiwa murder trial seems to finally be getting somewhere, but there's been plenty of drama along the way. New revelations coming to light this past week. So many people talking about a cell phone data analyst. But I don't want to take anything away from the man who's been covering this for pretty much the whole year. Is eNCA reporter Manqoba Mchunu making time for us this afternoon. And this week, I think, is when the entire nation, Manqoba, started switching on their TVs and never leaving again just because of what was coming out of court. Just remind us how significant this cell phone data analyst has been.
Well, I think, Gareth, what we've seen this past week is just bombshell after bombshell at the High Court. Of course, as this particular case took a dramatic twist, if I can put it that way, as far as what we've heard before. You would know that previously we've heard of intruders coming into the house, those that were inside the house saying that they were attacked, there was a robbery that took place, and that's when Senzo Meyiwa was killed, struggling in a scuffle with one of these intruders. And I think this was a state-laying foundation as far as what happened in this matter is concerned, that there were actually intruders that came into that house that had then demanded cell phones. But the question is, was it a robbery or was it a hit? And I think this is something that is slowly coming out of court. You know, with the evidence that we are hearing, we're not sure what the motive is yet, but certainly the evidence showing that it was just not a normal robbery that happened at that house, that perhaps there was a link between one of the people that was inside the house as well as these suspects. And I mean, in this case, Lamberta Steyn revealed that suspect 5, Fisoku Ntuli, had been in contact with Kelly Khumalo, who is the girlfriend, at the time, was a girlfriend of Senzo Meyiwa, and they had a child together. And we understand that they had 2 phone calls between the two of them. The first one was on the 2nd of August, and that call lasted, I think, less than 2 minutes. The second one was on the 14th of October, or 15th of October rather, Gareth, which is about 11 days before Senzo Meyiwa was shot in that incident. And of course, at this particular point, you're starting to understand that there might have been another possible motive, and I think the state is going to then direct its evidence and leading evidence as far as that motive is concerned. But what does appear is that there was communication, or seemingly communication, between Kelly Khumalo and one of the suspects in this particular matter.
And it goes to the day after the incident as well. And please correct me, Manqoba, if I get my facts mixed up, as you've been following this at great detail. So that was the build-up to the shooting of the night. But then, if I understood correctly, the cell phone data analyst said that the data was deleted off the phone the day after the shooting. Do I have that right?
You have it absolutely correct, Gareth. It suggests that because of what he found in the phone was that the phone was wiped out. And this is just hours after Senzo Meyiwa had died. But interestingly, also the cell phone analysis showing that Senzo Meyiwa's phone was actually in the hospital, contrary to what Zandile Khumalo had said in court, that they found the phone next to the stove in the kitchen when they returned from the hospital. This particular evidence showing that it was in fact inside the house. So there's a lot of questions, Gareth, as to the link. But one thing that we also know is that this particular suspect was in contact with Kelly Khumalo. And of course, the question then is, what exactly were they talking about? And this is a suspect who is known to be a hitman, Gareth, somebody who was convicted of 6 hits that he had conducted in KwaZulu-Natal. In fact, he was sentenced last year in January by the eSkhaweni Magistrates Court for killing about 11 people in KwaZulu-Natal. And so he has been sentenced to 6 life terms and 39 years in addition. So the question is, what is it really that they were talking about in this particular conversation? But perhaps let's take a listen to Steyn explaining the link between Kelly and one of the suspects.
During my analysis, I discovered that Kelly Khumalo with a number 27827 044 358 received a call from Ntuli Nkani with the number 27733 059202.
Just read that first name.
It's Fisoku.
Fisokuhle.
Sorry.
And if written in brackets 5, what does that indicate?
It means a suspect 5. And the call was on the 15th of October 2014 at 17:33:57. And the time of the duration of the call was 98 seconds, a minute and a half, more or less. And then the other party is the same, it's 27733059202, which belong to suspect number 5.
So, of course, apart from having Manqoba Mchunu following this for us inside courts, a very, very well-known legal expert, regular guest for us, Alton Hart, making time for me on a Sunday afternoon. Hello, Alton. Good to have you with us. What do you make of what Lamberta Steyn has given to the courts as well? It seems like the kind of evidence that's going to be very difficult to refute.
No, indeed so, Gareth. If one looks at the evidence, because the evidence here, it's of a technical nature, and it's very difficult to dispute it, because now the evidence shows that there was communication somehow between Kelly Khumalo and accused number 5, and also between accused number 5 and accused number 1 or number 3. So that evidence, and I just want Lamberta Steyn also to go a little bit further and maybe just use cell phone triangulation, or maybe he used it already, to show maybe they were in the vicinity of the Vosloorus home of Kelly Khumalo. Then I know it's a dead and buried case. And this is the view that I held from the beginning, that the people that was in that house was supposed to be listed as accused and not as witnesses. And now the evidence before court is now, it's clearly indicating that Zandile Khumalo was misleading the court from the get-go. And I want her to stand in that accused box, and I don't want this case to prove. They were supposed to be put on trial altogether, so that we don't have some sort of, when these guys are acquitted, they get free. Because they will say, but the guys that was there. So for me, but this evidence, it will be very difficult for them to now come and dispute it and say, it's there, it's on record. They might just now maybe challenge the authenticity, originality of that communication, but also there's already clear signs of information that was deleted. Why would you delete stuff from the deceased phone? Why would you lie about where the phone was found if you don't have any hand in what really transpired in that house on that fateful night?
Stay with me. I'm sure you know that I'm also speaking to Manqoba Mchunu with us. So we played the soundbite of when Lamberta Steyn was talking about the call itself. And to Alton's point, it's exactly what a lot of people in the country are going to ask is, why was the data deleted? Why was there a SIM card swap? There's all these issues around the cell phone, isn't there? And there's even the soundbite regarding one of the suspects from Steyn.
Indeed, Gareth, and I think it raises a lot of eyebrows as far as, what happened really. We're hearing a different side of, what we've heard before, the possible, suggestion by the defense that, in fact, it was in the people in the house, one of them, that had shot and killed Senzo Meyiwa. And I think what has taken everybody by, surprise and shock is the claims that came out of court this week. And this is evidence that is, hard to dispute. It's evidence from cell phone towers. It's evidence from the cell phone, data itself that shows that there was a link between Kelly Khumalo, who's one of the people in the house, and secondly, a link between the suspects themselves. Because on Friday we heard that, for example, accused number 5 had constant contact with accused number 3. This is Mthobisi Mncube. And what it suggests is that these two knew each other very well. But also accused number 5, Fisoguhle Ntuli, also spoke to accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, and also to accused number 1, Muzi Sibiya, which shows that then these individuals had known each other. So it's only accused number 4 that has been left out of the picture as far as communication is concerned. And at one point, accused 3 saves his number for accused 5 as Mfoka Khumalo. Which has many connotations and, many questions, because this is Fisoguhle Ntuli. He's not a Khumalo by surname. And what does it mean? Perhaps we'll hear that when a cross-examination continues, but it will be hard for the defense, given what we've heard also. As far as this evidence is concerned, it's technical, and it will be pretty difficult for them, to try and discredit some of this particular evidence. But perhaps we can listen to Steyn talking about the link that he found between these suspects.
Suspect number 5 did make contact with suspect number 3. That number of suspect number 5 also got contact with suspect number 2. the suspect number 5 also got contact with suspect number 1.
Is there an indication as to who the central figure is, who the central person is?
It's not possible to determine. I can just determine that the suspects in front of the court knows each other. They did talk to each other.
Well, Alton, I just wanted to ask you a question as well in terms of what the defense is going to be facing as cross-examination starts. Will they have a tough time trying to discredit this particular evidence?
The evidence of saying the only thing that needs to be proven by the state is here that the evidence was taken from the phones. It was compiled properly in line with procedures so that you can show that this evidence is genuine, it's authentic. There was no tampering with the evidence or the information gathered from the cell phone service providers as well as the towers. Once that is proven, I don't see the defense getting through that because that is bulletproof then. That they show that there was no tampering in how the evidence was retrieved and actually now put in a documentary form. But if they want to see it, the electronic copies can be made available and how the process was actually undertaken by the investigators who actually investigated the various cell phone numbers and the communication. Once that is on the table, I think the defense would just say that they don't have any questions for Lambertstein. The connection is there now. They need to come and explain what was the connection. And now then it becomes of utmost importance that Kelly Khumalo must be called either by the defense or the state, but I don't think the state will call her, by the defense to come and say what was this communication between her and the various accused persons in connection with what were they talking? Is it bookings? Is it whatever it is? But they need to come and explain. So that is the only other thing that they can say why they were in communication. About was there communication? That's not up for debate. It's there. It's proven.
I want to ask you in a moment just about how de novo Alton has played into this as well. But I know Manqoba wants to ask about something regarding the SIM cards. But if you've just joined us, good afternoon. I'm Gareth Edwards, Manqoba Mchunu with us, Alton Hart, legal expert via Zoom. What we're doing now is talking about the Kelly Khumalo aspect of this court case. I want to remind you that Slindelo Masikane did a sit-down interview with her. I think it was last year as well, that interview with Kelly Khumalo and Slindelo Masikane. We're going to have that back on air for you in about 5 minutes from now. So if you're following this, I highly recommend this Sunday afternoon. Stay where you are. That's coming up in about 5 minutes. Because I was also confused. You want to ask Alton about the SIM swap? I was also a bit confused. Go ahead.
How damning is that evidence, Alton, the SIM card swaps that were done just after Senzo Meyiwa's killing, and the links with David Matebula, who we know is one of the soccer players or former soccer players? And what does this suggest?
No, that's damning evidence, because if a person is deceased, you cannot touch their property at all unless you are the executor of his or her estate. Now, the mere fact that somebody went and did a SIM swap on Senzo Meyiwa's number, that in itself is now defeating the ends of justice, interfering with a pending investigation. That in itself is a charge on its own. Who did that? They need to come and answer. Now it's clear that they can show that this was a cell phone that used to belong to David Matebula. He needs to just be caught and say, but what happened to your cell phone? Did you sell it? Did you give it to somebody? How did your cell phone land up? And then the person that did. So Zandile Khumalo them is not of the hook. They need to come and say, but you said we found the phone under this, lying under the stove. So who took the phone from there? They need to come and explain that. That's damning evidence to show here was tampering with a crime scene, and there was an active concealment of a crime, so that we as the public in South Africa do not get to the bottom of who really killed Senzo Meyiwa between the people that was in the house. And it's a shame that his friends, that they call him his friends, was in the house and they refused to tell the court on the first occasion what really transpired. Hence we are now in a trial that started de novo. And I think the trial starting de novo, Gareth, this is an eye-opener, because now the state sort of have got more information and they had better time to actually investigate, to actually prosecute this thing to the fullest and the best of their ability. I think that de novo, people would say justice delayed is justice denied, but I think here, the revelation that's coming out here, we will get to the bottom of what really transpired in this case.
And I want to ask you about this de novo very quickly, Alton. At my very, very basic understanding of this, it's essentially a restart of the court case. It's basically a whiteboard. We're starting with 0 again. One, are we hearing anything different that we didn't hear? I suppose the right way of phrasing is the previous proceedings. A, are we hearing a lot more in this version of the court case? And two, do you agree with me? I'm getting a sense that the judge is a lot more involved in this version of the court case, this de novo version of the court case. You agree or disagree with me?
No, I do agree with you, Gareth, that the judge is more proactive in actually asking, and he's also making what we refer to in the legal context as judicial notice, to say that, because he was referring to the breadth of a street. And he said, we all know the location. So that is things what we call judicial notice. Certain things that you know to say. He even mentioned at some stage that there's nobody in a location that says they couldn't see that 2 or 3 intruders ran from in the location. There's always somebody looking. So that role that he's playing is what we call judicial notice. And I like it because it helps out to clarify a lot of things. And for me, there's the novo thing. I think the second version is like in athletics. The first one was a false start. Now we have a proper start. And now we really get into the business end of things. And the only thing that the state needs to do is now bring back Tumelo Madlala, bring back Mtokezisi Twala. Let them come and testify again, because they already gave a version. They cannot change it now. And we will get to the bottom of the things very quickly, very soon.
And Alton, I'm going to stay with you in a moment just to wrap up and give me your final thoughts on what to expect. But I want to ask Manqoba as well. So you know all the detail. You've been in the courtrooms. You're seeing the emotions of those accused and the family members and the interested parties. What's the next step here? What are we doing with this story?
Well, we expect, of course, cross-examination to begin tomorrow. And as you've heard from Alton, it's going to be tough, really, for the defense, because this means that they must now try to discredit this particular evidence that has been given, more especially, Advocate Azandile Mshololo, who represents number 5 in this particular matter. But I think equally also the other accused that have been implicated in this. And I think one of the interesting questions as well is the links that we saw the state, trying to now show, between one of the intruders that was in the house, that has been testified about, who had dreadlocks in the house, and this is a person that was carrying a firearm at the time that had then, according or the inference is that this is a person that shot and killed Senzo Meyiwa. And what we heard, just as that evidence was wrapping up, is that one of the accused, from his phone that they confiscated a day before Senzo Meyiwa was shot, that accused number 3, Mtobisi Mncube, had dreadlocks. And in fact, to the description that has been given by some of the witnesses from outside and inside the house that spoke to this man that had dreadlocks that they saw. So it's interesting how it's going to pan out, but certainly we are expecting to hear what the defense is going to ask and how they're going to try and, really poke holes in this evidence, because it's technical and really it's seemingly reliable.
Yeah, it is very, very technical. Manqoba Mchunu, thank you very much, obviously, on the court case for us from this week as well. Alton Hart, I'm going to give you the final word. So we're getting the nuts and bolts of this from what is happening with this. Okay, so we're going to be covering this court case from tomorrow as well. I'm actually going to say goodbye to Alton Hart, excuse me, our legal expert for the moment.